Welcome to Stay Close. I'm your host, Sarah Broussard.
Heartbreaks feed with long gone.
Today, we're going to explore the beautiful paradox of returning to our true selves by shedding the old layers we've accumulated over time. But before we dive in, let's take, 30 seconds together to arrive fully in the moment. Don't let this pull you away. It's just a moment where we can connect here together, where we understand that we've carved this time out deliberately, intentionally, consciously. And hopefully, by doing that, we have the opportunity to integrate this self knowledge just a little bit more. So, the breath, right? Our breath is the most powerful tool we have for reconnection with ourself. It's this tool that's involuntary and voluntary. It's a bridge between our conscious and our unconscious selves. When we've disconnected from ourselves, the breath is the first thing that changes. It becomes shallow, held, or irregular. So when you notice that and you do something about that by breathing deeply and expanding your belly to receive that precious breath, you are activating incredible knowledge about yourself. You are connecting your conscious and unconscious mind. So wherever you are right now, whether driving, walking, or sitting, take a deep breath in and out. And then feel how that breath instantly connects your mind to your body. As you inhale, notice the expansion in your rib cage, the slight lift of your shoulders. And as you exhale, feel the gentle release, the letting go. One more breath in and out. And remember that each breath is a conversation between our body, your body, and the world around you. The most fundamental exchange of giving and receiving. The breath is also completely present. I love this. It exists only in this moment, right? You can't breathe in the past or the future. You can only breathe in the present. So when you focus on your breath, you're automatically brought into this moment now, into your body, into the truth of your existence. Wow. And that is simply by paying attention to this involuntary tool, right? This tool that happens for us without our even thinking about it. And yet, when we bring consciousness to that beautiful tool that keeps us alive, so much changes. Now, just notice how different you might possibly feel after just taking 2 conscious breaths. This immediacy is why breath is such a powerful anchor for reconnection. So no matter how far you've drifted, the breath is always available, always waiting to bring you home to yourself. That small moment of presence is what today's episode is all about. Finding your way back to yourself when you've drifted away, which is something we all do, no matter how long we've been practicing self-healing, self-hopeful practices. We all drift away at times. It's just part of our human brain. I've named today's episode Unbecoming to Become because it speaks to the paradox in our healing journey. To become who we truly are, we often must unbecome who we've pretended to be. Like nobody understands this better than I do, especially after last week's episode. And this concept connects beautifully once again with our theme, the beautiful thread that we are weaving through this season's episodes, which is David Whyte's poem, Courage, which includes the line, "To be courageous is to stay close to the way we are made." What strikes me about this line is how it suggests that our authentic self isn't something we need to build or create. It's already there, waiting beneath the layers we've accumulated. I'm going to say that again, waiting beneath the layers we've accumulated. Layers that we've put on for some reason or another to protect ourselves. Unbecoming is the process of peeling away those layers, the protective habits, the limiting beliefs, the adaptations we've made to feel safe in the world that sometimes, oftentimes right now, doesn't feel safe. When we unbecome these acquired selves, we naturally return to our pure nature. So today, we're going to explore 3 parts of this unbecoming journey. How and why we move away from our true selves in the first place. That's number 1. Number 2, the practices that help us shed the layers and return to authenticity. And finally, why rest might be the most essential foundation for this entire process of unbecoming. As we move through this exploration, I invite you to consider this. What might you need to unbecome in order to become who you truly are? What might you need to unbecome in order to become who you truly are? So hang in there with this. It's a bit heavy at times. I get it. I get it. But when we start to connect with these concepts, not in these broad strokes, but in these tiny little turtle steps, like if there's one thing in this conversation today that strikes a chord or like, wow, yeah, okay, that one line meant something to me. Write it down and explore it and see where it takes you. That is a beautiful first step on a path of self-healing. So the first part of this is I'm going to call moving away from ourselves. And when we move away from the way we were made for so many reasons, and in doing so, we become something we were never meant to be. Sometimes it's for acceptance. We believe we'll be more loved if we're different. I know about that. Sometimes it's because of limiting beliefs or what I call brutal beliefs, something we've come to believe about ourselves that simply is not true. But possibly the most common reason is safety. When we experience something that feels overwhelming, whether it's trauma, burnout, or simply the everyday stress of modern life, we energetically shift out of our physical form. We disconnect. We become someone else, someone more guarded, more controlled, less spontaneous, less authentic. So, this process of becoming someone other than our true self is tough on our body, tough on our heart, tough on the emotions, and tough on the psyche. It's like trying to swim upstream against a powerful current. You might make some progress, yes, but you're fighting your natural flow, depleting your energy and missing the joy of moving in harmony with the water or with your life. I experienced this most dramatically in my early teens, as we've discussed, when I lost my mother and then my father. Everything I knew about safety was suddenly gone. I was thrown out of the security bubble. I had to find ways to protect myself, and in that process, I became someone I wasn't meant to be. Hypervigilant, disconnected from my emotions, always on guard. So many of us carry these false becomings from childhood, right? The original wound. Others might develop them later through overwork, relationships, or some other extraordinary trauma. But the common thread is that we move away from our natural state of being present, connected, and whole. We become versions of ourselves designed for survival rather than thriving. This becoming something other than ourselves is paradoxically what we must unbecome to truly heal. My own journey back to myself began in my late 20s. I want to share this journey in detail because it illustrates how we can move from simply managing our disconnection to actually healing it at the root, which is the goal. No band-aids here. Let's get to the root of what's going on and really heal it from that level. So the first doorway was Kundalini Yoga. This wasn't just exercise for me, it was a technology for transformation. Didn't really know what that meant when I started it, but it felt right. It called to me. So the practice combines specific breath patterns, movements, and meditations, and sound to activate what yogis call the dormant energy at the base of the spine. What drew me to Kundalini wasn't theory, but results. So within just weeks of daily practice, sometimes for only 11 minutes, other times 3 minutes, I noticed extraordinary changes. The constant background of my anxiety that I'd lived with for so long began to dissolve. I started to feel more embodied, more present in my own skin. I may not have had the words for that at that time, but I absolutely could feel it in the body. And this is why I always speak to clients and my community about the body is the truth teller. Check in with the body. It doesn't lie. So this practice, it taught me my first crucial lesson. And that was we change not through insights alone, but through consistent practice that literally rewires our neural pathways. The brain is malleable, what neuroscientists call neuroplasticity. And when we commit to daily practice, even in brief sessions, we create new neural networks that eventually become our default state. For me, this looked like setting a timer for 11 minutes each morning for a specific meditation. No heroics, no hour-long sessions, just 11 focused minutes, which is still a big deal, right? The consistency was more important than the duration, and I really want to emphasize that. It was the consistent practice of getting up and doing this intentionally that began to change the way I thought and felt and moved in the world. The consistency taught my nervous system that it was safe to be present because let's not forget when we don't feel safe, we energetically leave the body. So, once again, the practice held me in a place that allowed me to feel safe in the present, safe to feel, and safe to come home fully to my body. Alongside this physical practice, I began doing therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy with Dr. Lamora. And this is where I started to find words. I said just a moment ago, I didn't have the words for what was happening to me. I knew things were shifting, but I didn't have the words. And through conversations with Dr. Lamora and the practice of cognitive behavioral therapy, I started to understand things about why I'd even adopted these ways of being, this moving away from myself. Because truly, when you're young and you're just trying to find a way to feel safe when things around you externally don't feel safe, you're just, your brain is trying to protect you. And it's not like you're consciously thinking about, oh, let me move away from my body. I don't feel safe here. So, our work, my work with Dr. Lamora, felt revolutionary because it started to help me understand how my childhood abandonment had shaped my adult thinking patterns. He guided me to identify what he called cognitive distortions. Thoughts like, I'm fundamentally unlovable, or people always leave me, that had become so familiar I didn't even recognize them as beliefs rather than facts. I remember one session where he asked me to trace a specific thought, and that thought was, I'm too much for people. He wanted me to trace it back to the origin, to the original wound. And as I followed that thread, I could see clearly how that belief had formed when my mother left. My child's mind had created a narrative. She left because I was too much to handle. And that narrative shaped decades of my relationships. So simply recognizing these patterns wasn't enough. What we had to do was develop more specific practices to interrupt these patterns. So, thought records where I documented triggering situations. So, this is the value of noticing what resonates for you and writing it down or taking it or making that inner inquiry. For me, I've journaled pretty much my whole life. So documenting these triggering situations for me was something that I could do pretty easily. But you can also record them. There's many ways of doing this. What it truly is bringing attention to things that trigger you, that make you feel threatened or sad or anxious, and paying attention to that instead of moving away from that by trying to numb away from the disorder, the sadness. The second thing was evidence gathering to challenge these limiting beliefs. I was asking questions like, did she really leave because I was too much to handle? Did I have any facts or experiences that could really substantiate that? No, I really didn't. So that started to help because it was like, okay, I guess this is just a story I've made up in my mind. And thirdly, it was alternative narrative creation. This is where we go to rewriting the story. I can retell this story in a way that feels more aligned with who I am as an adult and how I want to feel around this. Very powerful. So these weren't just mental exercises, they became daily practices. And again, I can't say it enough. Consistency will change the way you think and act and behave, and then ultimately will change the circumstances of your life. Then we come to one of my favorite things, and that is the birth of the observer. And what does that mean? Well, what emerged from these combined practices was something I now call the observer, right? I write about this in my book, Inside, a Guide to the Resources Within. And it became a part of my consciousness, this observer that could witness my emotional weather without being swept away by it. I could start to notice, like, oh, look at this. Like almost like I was watching a movie. Look at this. This situation just triggered something in you that made you feel like you felt when you were a child. Like my mom left because I was too much to handle. The observer would put that right there in my consciousness, and I would say, oh, I'd have the chance before reacting or responding to that situation to ask, is this true? Is this true? No, we've already determined that that isn't true. That isn't how it is. That's an old belief that absolutely hasn't supported you. So here's what the observer practice looks like in my life. I would be in a conversation, feeling myself getting triggered. And then suddenly it was as if a part of me stepped back and could see the whole scene unfolding. Like, I'm feeling abandoned right now. That's the old pattern activating. So this witnessing consciousness didn't judge or try to fix it. It simply observed with compassion. It was simply handing me the opportunity to look at this situation before I did anything about it. So in that observation, there was freedom, there was space. And that was incredible. Yeah. I think that when we give ourselves this time to observe our life before that cloud of sadness or depression or anxiety comes in and descends, that we can then see that it is like weather passing through rather than a permanent state of being. Before, that weather probably would trap me for weeks, literally for weeks. And yet now I had tools, specific breathing patterns, cognitive reframing exercises, movement practices that could help the storm pass more quickly, sometimes within minutes rather than hours or days. But a deeper question here. About 2 years ago, for me, something shifted. After decades of skillfully managing my emotional weather, I found myself asking a more fundamental question. What if the gray cloud didn't have to come at all? That question wasn't about denial or toxic positivity. It was a genuine inquiry. What if these storms weren't actually inevitable? What if there was a layer of healing deeper than management? Something at the root of healing. This question arose during a period of profound exhaustion. After decades of managing my trauma responses, I was tired. I was really tired. The tools that I spoke about earlier had helped. They had helped me for so long, but there was still effort involved. And something in me just was saying perhaps there was a state of being where the old wounds were so deeply healed that they no longer activated in the first place. So this wasn't about reaching some perfect state where I never felt sad or triggered. Rather, it was about a possibility of such complete integration that the old patterns no longer had the power. This realization didn't diminish the value of all I'd learned. The observer consciousness, the management tools, these were essential steps on my path, but they weren't the final destination, which is what I have found to be so astonishing. What I've discovered since then has been nothing short of miraculous. The journey toward root healing isn't quick or linear, but it is possible. I find myself in a place that I couldn't have imagined at 25 or 45 or even 5 years ago. The work of healing doesn't end, but its nature changes. And I want you to know that this deeper healing is available to all of us, regardless of age or how long we've carried our wounds. Our nervous systems possess remarkable capacities for regeneration and integration, even after decades of trauma patterns. The gray clouds may still occasionally gather, but they no longer define my internal landscape. And in that spaciousness, I've found not just absence of pain, but presence of joy, a joy that isn't dependent on circumstances, but arises from the simple miracle of being alive and whole, exactly as I am. This journey toward wholeness isn't distant or complicated. It begins with simple practices that anchor us in our bodies, right where healing happens. Now, let me share one of the practices that has helped me reconnect when I feel myself drifting away or ungrounded and lost. This will snap me back and put my feet on the ground in a way that says, yeah, let's get a little perspective here and not believe the mean chatter of the mind. A little history. After running a trauma recovery summit about 4 years ago that attracted about 65,000 registrants, I found myself completely exhausted, bone tired, as I described it. Managing even my well established practices became really difficult. That's when I discovered Tracy Stanley's book, Radiant Rest, and the practice of Yoga Nidra. The practice was simple. You lie down. That's it. You lie down. And that simplicity was exactly what I needed. I committed to a 40-day Yoga Nidra practice, and through it, I began to recover myself. I realized that once again, I had moved away from the way I was made and was feeling the fragmentation that comes with that separation. What I've come to understand is that rest isn't just something we do to recover from activity. It's the foundation that makes all other healing possible. In my book, Inside a Guide to the Resources Within, I talk about the concept of a spiritual savings account. We make deposits into this account through nutrition, laughter, journaling, creativity, and many other practices. But rest is worth 10 times the value of all other practices. It's the foundation that allows curiosity, openness, joy, and creativity to emerge. Because without adequate rest, we're simply not working on all cylinders. So I send you off today with a practice, a daily check in with these questions. These will all be in your show notes. Don't worry if you miss them. Here are 3 questions to ask yourself daily. Where am I holding tension in my body right now? What practice would help me feel more like myself today? And what is one small way I can honor my need for rest today? Those simple questions will help you recognize when you're moving away from yourself, and it will help you take small steps to return. Just those 3 questions. Where am I holding tension in my body? What practice would help me feel more like myself? And what is one small way I can honor my need for rest? Amazing. So amazing. So here's what I call the courage paradox. In our culture, pushing through exhaustion is celebrated as strength. Resting is often seen as weakness. It's just a fact. It's what many of us have been brought up to believe. But true courage is often found in the decision to stop, to rest, to listen to your body when everything around you is saying, keep going. It takes courage to stay close to the way you were made when the world is constantly trying to reshape you into something else. To finish today, I want you to understand that so much of this returning home can feel like a tightly wound ball of string. Like, where on earth will I start? But what I'm trying to do is give you small little practices that allow you the opportunity to experience small successes and hopefully encourage you to continue on. So, my best advice here is really try it out. Don't believe my words, believe your experience, because that's the most important and valuable experience that you will ever have. Try it one day. If it feels good, keep going. Do it the next day. And then see how it feels after 3 or 4 or 7 days. And if it feels good and you are gaining some insight and strength, continue on. Just continue on. And really notice the profound gift that you are giving yourself in that moment. Remember, when we commit to returning to ourselves, to staying close to the way we were made, we create ripple effects far beyond our own experience. Our relationships deepen, our work becomes more authentic, and our presence in our communities becomes more impactful. Small practices have amazing power over time. And as David Whyte's poem suggests, it takes courage to stay close to the way you were made. But it's in that closeness that we find our true strength, our genuine voice, and our deepest peace. Rest isn't just recovery. It's a portal to remembering who we truly are. And in that remembering, life becomes simpler, more aligned, more spontaneous. We don't have to work so hard to be ourselves. I'll leave you with this thought. Your life is held in your precious hands, in your precious heart. Through rest and gentle practices, everything can change in the most supportive ways possible. Thank you for being with me today. Stay close.
Fire under feet. The sensual toe tapping up your street.
This is Sarah Broussard, and you've been listening to Stay Close. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and consider sharing it with someone who might need to hear this message. Stay close, everyone.